Welcome to the Abyssinian Syllabary, where we spell out Ethiopia in 33 characters. I'm Yves-Marie Stranger, your host and the compiler of these Abyssinian lives. Nota bene, while any resemblance to actual countries, past or present, and to historical figures is not purely coincidental, this is a work of fiction. For a primer on these Ethiopian characters, newcomers may start with the prologue by Manuel de Goes. To order the book or a poster of the Abyssinian Syllabary, visit Ethiopia.com. That's UTHIOPIA.com. I hold dear the holloways of Gojam in the vicinity of Mota and the monastery of the Golden Mount, when the sun declines in your stead and has your shadow run ahead. I am fond, as well, of the numinous dawn of the month of Tr, and I am a great lover of the storms, thunder and lightning of the month of Hamle. I will then walk out to meet the tempest in long strides, with never a brolly or a gaby. The Apocrypha of Zareyakob. Igorivitch, also known as the Monk Theodoros. Year. At the beginning of the year of grace of the Apostle Mark, 1876, Julian calendar, there swelled a rumour concerning a thaumaturge who had appeared on Mount Kaka, not far from the Entoto hills, where Emperor Menelik had chosen to encamp that year. The gossip was all the more vexing to the king, as he could distinguish Mount Kaka every morning as he emerged from his tent, and his breakfast of buttered tripe. Lent was mercifully late that year. The spies reported that the miracle maker pontificated to the Oromo tribes in their own language, and that he was not adverse to theological pettifogging in Amharic either with the solitudinarians of the mountain. What's more, the first as well as the latter agreed that he was nothing less than a new Menfus Kudus. The birds perched on his shoulders to drink from his tear ducts. The catamounts of the forest came to lie down meekly to listen to his sermons in front of the opening of his dugout. Here, this miracle maker had put down his earthen bowl and his blanket of raw wool, his sole utensil, and only bed linen. There was more. For the man answered to the name Theodoros, the third, the one that all had been awaiting. His homilies were full of the usual thunderous proclamations on the sinners of this world, and all this would be a prelude to the return of the true king to Abyssinia. His declamations, the prophetic name he had chosen for himself, his election of Mount Kaka, the mountain was known to conceal the ruins of fortresses of King David, or perhaps Alexander. Everything suggested the emergence of a troublemaker, like so many Ethiopia had seen before. These messianic figures speak in metaphors full of unnatural fornications. They work the peasantry into a lather, causing them to march with their pitchforks. Invariably, these simpletons are then cut down. Menelik saw no need to stoke unrest in his peasantry. In this crucial year, in his campaigning against the kingdom of Walaita, he had retained willy-nilly, on the verge of this short rainy season of 76, a clutch of European envoys, all present in his capital canvas on Entoto. Each envoy was more keen than the other to impress upon the monarch their government's goodwill and the munificence of their turnkey road and railway projects. This unruly behaviour in direct view of his royal camp was unseemly. A cavalry regiment was expedited under Fitauri Keninisa, an Oromo chief of 1,000, from the grasslands of Jida. He would know how to speak to these people, as they were of one house, which was done. And 3 days later, to the satisfaction of the emperor, the man that would be Theodoros was dragged in front of him in chains shortly after the monarch's breakfast, which he had been so kind as to invite the German envoy to partake in, having the hapless man served thrice diced tripe in bile. Theodoros was as tall and thin as a prayer stick. He wore his hair matted, as is the custom of anchorites, and was wrapped up in a blanket of dirty wool. If he did answer questions, certain questions, those that did not displease him, that is, and if he did so in serviceable Amharic, he did so with a heavy accent, the type of which could not be pinpointed. Yet it was evident to all that the man was a Ferenc. Theodoros did consent to answer practical questions, such as, "Since when have you been holed up in that pit? And do you know that Ethiopia is endowed with a legitimate emperor, and that his name is Menelik?" And if he willingly accepted to put an immediate end to his sermonizing, and to usurping for himself the name Theodoros, he remained blank on his origins, his provenance, and on how he had come to elect the mountain Yerer. Here is the tale, with which he was not forthcoming. The man who would be Theodoros III was born towards the middle of the 6th decade of the 19th century, in a hut of round log and grass sod under a 300-year-old chestnut tree in Bulgaria. At this time, the country was an Ottoman voivodeship. From the east, from the village of Pastra, could be heard the call of the muezzin, and from the west, the muffled thud of the flat stone bells of the Orthodox monastery, St. Ivan of Ryla. Christian bells, even those made of suspended flat rock, were prohibited throughout the land, and wrapped in cowhide. His baptism name was Grigor Igorivitch, and Grigor showed himself to be quick at learning the songs and prayers of the Holy Mass. "The voice of a seraph," marveled Papa Nertiniev, the choir leader. Grigor was taken under the wing of Papa Vasiliev, who dedicated himself to preparing icons in the monastery attic all winter long, hugging the iron stove with his legs. Grigor painted, as if with the feather of an angel, exclaimed Vasiliev, a beatific smile opening up in his salt and pepper beard. Grigor's kin whittled stakes of chestnut wood in the summer, ate its fruit in the autumn, and kept herds of hog all year long in the woods. Chestnuts and pigs remained the toil of choice in these lands, as they were ice-cold in winter and steaming hot in summer. This weather, which is nefarious for men, is auspicious to pigs, so that sows breed 10 or more at a time. Grigor's parents began to cut the cloth for his robes and pour the oil for his ordination. They weighed up the benefits they would accrue from their son with a clear voice becoming a monk. It was then that an unexpected event upset this preordained path, just as surely as cowhide deadened the report of the monastery bells. One April morning, as Grigor walked to the monastery for a day of chants in celebration of a saint crucified in distant times, he saw, leisurely approaching him from the other side of the bridge on the river Iskar, a magnificent man. This man was as beautiful as he was tall. He wore knee-high boots and a white linen shirt that puffed up at the wrists. And when he sat down with Grigor on the bridge above the quick waters of the Strava, the novitiate saw that he was of a light colour, olive rather than chestnut. Grigor was to call to mind, long after the event, the arc of a silver trout above the swift waters. The man told the child of a distant land from which he, a Christian child, had been sold to the Mutsua Turks. He cast for Grigor in the waters of the Iskar the reflection of an august river and of a mountain palace built in the mirror image of the ideal city on the hill, where a just king bearing God's words would reside one day and presage the blessed kingdom and the end of the Turk and of his accursed book. We do not know how Grigor, Theodoros III, made his way to Ethiopia. His confinement in Menelik's camp has been related in Dr. Traversi's testimony. We only know that Theodoros spoke French and Amharic as well as some Oromo, and that he seemed, in addition, to display an understanding of Russian, as well as, of course, Bulgarian too. Theodoros disappeared one morning from the royal camp before a condign punishment could be meted out. He was never heard of again.